Hey everybody, and welcome to Hell is for Children. This show is on every Saturday at 3 p.m. Eastern Time, which is 2100 hours Central European Time. My name is Geerte Franken, and this show is all about the topic of protective mothers and their children. So, what's a protective mother? A protective mother tries to protect her child or children from their abusive father by many means necessary, which is an uphill battle in today's global corrupt family court system that thrives on paternal entitlement. And without further ado, let me bring you to today's guest. Today's guest is protective mother Lyra. She lost parental rights of her 3 children to foster care when she attempted to get a restraining order against her abusive ex. Now, Lyra is a true inspiration because after everything she's gone through, she has founded the Coalition for Protection of Children and Families in order to raise awareness and to offer support to other protective mothers. So welcome to Hell is for Children, Lyra.
Thank you, Geerte. I appreciate being able to speak with you today. It's been a long journey for me. By looking at me, you wouldn't think that I am a survivor of domestic violence and 3 car accidents that were near-death car accidents, but the truth is that I am a survivor of domestic violence, and I was victimized by the Department of Children and Families when I asked for help to get out of the relationship in which I found myself stuck in. Instead of receiving help, I was directed to a homeless shelter, which had been the place where my children had previously been when their father had to go to the hospital and they were left alone with people who come out of jail and go to the homeless shelter. It's not a safe place. There were no services offered to me to assist me in leaving the home which I was already trying to move out of. I had a trailer, and it was a 5th-wheel trailer, but I didn't have any money because the abuser had taken all of my money. And I informed CPS of all of this, and I was in a place that I wasn't even familiar with. I had moved from Vermont to California a year and a half prior with my husband. We came to California looking for a new life together. Unfortunately, he has mental issues that are very destructive and abusive. And I could not, in all good conscience, stay with him, but I did not know who to talk to, who to rely on, or where to go. And another man in the area where we were staying started becoming involved and helping to watch my children while I tried to figure out how to extricate myself from the abusive relationship.
How old were your kids back then, and how many did you have?
I had 2 children, and one of them was 7 and one of them was 4. I found myself trying to save my husband from killing himself in the hotel room one day. And I had to send him to a mental hospital for a week, trying to get him better. In the meantime, I didn't have much resources. I didn't have a lot of money. One of the misconceptions in a lot of household relationships where there's a conflict is that there's going to be money available and there's going to be resources available and things are going to be resolved and stuff. But there isn't. There just isn't, and no matter how hard I tried, I could not get away until this other man who had been watching my children, and they loved him. They actually, we spent 6 months, kind of switching roles. This other man would help me with the kids, but also he helped my ex-husband when he passed out in the middle of the highway. You know, helped him get over to the other side of the street. So when I was still married to my husband, and he had to go to the mental hospital, when he came back, he started abusing me first off, and was doing all kinds of things, pushing me down in front of the children, and yelling and screaming at me all the time. And I had to leave. And this other man who'd been helping me offered me a way out. Now, mind you, I'd only known him for 6 months, and I was cautious, but I needed to get out of the situation I was in. And this was a way that I thought would work. This man and I developed a relationship together over the next year. He bought a trailer for me 2 months after taking me out of the abusive relationship, and he put me in a place with this trailer to where I could take care of my children. And so then moving forward back to what happened when my children were removed from my care after being harmed by this man, we had a child together now. We were trying to make a family of our own and include everybody in the family. And so we had our own child together. And shortly after I gave birth to our young child, our young son, he had some real difficulty trying to become a parent to our son and to the other two children at the same time. And I found out that he relapsed and started becoming abusive towards me and towards my son. And I tried to intervene to stop him from harming my oldest son, not our son, but my oldest son. And in the process, I was pushed out of the way, later strangled. He stranded me at our place of residence. And I called the police and I said, I need help. And the police came and they helped. They arrested him. And then they told me that they would drive me to get the van, which he had parked in town. So the next day, to my surprise, you know, I'm packing up and getting my stuff into my trailer. CPS comes. 2 CPS officials come to my house and start interrogating me. And then they take my oldest son aside into a car and interrogate him. And then they came out and said to me, you need to leave right now. I said, well, wait a minute. I've got a trailer here with all of my belongings. What do you mean? No, we're not going to leave until you leave. You're going to go to the homeless shelter. Yeah. Yeah, they said, oh, we called. We found that there's a bed for you and the kids at the homeless shelter. We're not leaving until you leave. So that's how that began. And then I didn't go to the homeless shelter because I was afraid. I was mortally terrified of the people that habitate the homeless shelter. So I found a friend halfway to where the homeless shelter was who was willing to take me for a few nights. The thing you got to understand is that where I live is in Northern California, and it's very rural. Towns are 50 to 70 miles apart from each other, especially on the coast. There's a big mountain range between the coastal community and the inland community. My specific injuries are such that, to be transporting myself from one elevation to the other all the time, it hurts my head. I get chronic migraines. It's horrible. I didn't have money. I didn't have any friend to lean on. And CPS was telling me I had to come up to this big town on the coast and fill out forms, but not just once or twice, but 4 days in a row. So I'm looking for housing, okay? I don't have a lot of money. I have to save the money I do have in case I find a place to live. CPS is telling me I have to be going to Fort Bragg, this town, every day to write down what happened specifically. Okay, this is less than 3 days after the incident where this man had strangled me twice after harming my oldest son.
What was happening to your kids during this time?
They were with me.
Okay.
CPS would not, well, they offered to take them, but I was afraid because I had heard what happens when CPS gets involved and takes your children, even, and there are actually rules that they have to follow where they have to offer a parent all kinds of services and assistance to keep the family together. And I was not offered those. I was not only not offered them, I wasn't even informed of the fact that they are there. And this is, another part of the problem that I have found through my fight to get my children back. And the reason they were taken from me is because I wasn't able to get up to the town in the courtroom on the day because it was a whole week after the 4 days that I had already had to drive up to this town. And I didn't have any money. And so I was stranded down there with no money, just barely a roof over my head. I had a hotel room at that point. And I wanted to leave Mendocino altogether and take my children down to Arizona where my mom is. I had a van. I could have just driven. They said, no, you can't do that while your case is in this county. Said it a couple of times, both before and after they took my kids away from me for not being able to file a restraining order against the man who was abusive towards me at that time.
Yeah, you should have gotten support instead.
Yeah, I should have gotten a lot of support, but it's like one of the tragedies, I think, of this whole system. It's a broken system. Department of Child and Families, the concept is an ideal concept. We want to protect our children. We want to protect families. But that's all gotten convoluted with money and where that money is funded, where it comes from and where it goes, and what kind of incentives are offered for what different parts of child family services. And the sad reality is that the money goes to foster care. There is more money to be made from adopting children out. There is it's called incentivized adoptions. And I have a petition out that's requesting that the new president stop incentivized adoptions. There are actually a few petitions out requesting that.
Can you share with the audience what the Families First Act is, how it originated, and how it has developed over time?
I can't. To be honest with you, what I understand is more about what happened in '97 when Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton passed laws that shortened the time in which a parent can comply with reunification services, and how that has enabled foster care to explode with children that don't even deserve to be there, with parents that are discriminated against for little to no reason, where social workers can investigate a family based on somebody's anonymous call, and where the parents do not have the rights to their children anymore.
Now you talked about the financial incentive, because this is all federally funded. So CPS gets money for every child that they remove, right?
Yes, and the department that adopts the children out gets a bonus for adopting each child out. The foster family that my children were originally placed with was an emergency foster shelter. Less than a month after they were placed in emergency foster care, I had moved to Fort Bragg. I had a trailer. I actually had two trailers, one that I was living in and another one that I was remodeling. I had I had a job that was part of my residence at the trailer park that I was in, and it was a residential trailer park. I was quickly making friends. I was complying with reunification services. I was there every day for my kids. I was even there when my ex-husband didn't show up. And excuse me, I still wasn't giving them back. I was told the reason was because they were worried I was going to go back to the abusive father of my youngest son. And so that it didn't matter that I had a restraining order against him, that he was stalking me. And I was telling him, leave me the fuck alone, or I'm going to have to call authority and have you arrested again. It didn't matter. It didn't matter that they saw that I was struggling. They wrote about how they saw that I was struggling because of my disabilities. But they said in their report, she's having difficulties. We don't know if it's because of her disabilities, because I wasn't receiving federal Social Security disability at the time. And all I was on was a general assistance funding program of $289 a month. And I still managed to be there for my kids.
Let's look at some pictures of you and your kids, so the audience gets an idea. Here they are, the three of them.
Yeah, that was 2 years ago. That my oldest son, the one in the gray in the middle, I was sending him letters for 6 months, but he's been seeing his father every month, seeing his abusive father every month. And now I'm not even allowed to send him letters because he doesn't want me to.
So he has been alienated from you.
Yes. And I've complained about it. I've contested all of it repeatedly in court. And because of the way that the judicial system works, it didn't matter. They say, oh, well, he wants to talk to his dad.
Yeah,
see, he's also a victim of domestic violence, not just from the father of my youngest son, but from his father. He was also a victim. And he was removed from his father's care twice because his father was abusive. Abusive of drugs, abusive of alcohol, and abusive of him. And it took multiple instances of abuse that had been verified by the Department of Child and Family Services before he was removed from his father's care. And one of the psychological components, I suppose you would say, is that a victim, in order to maintain survival, starts to identify with their abuser. And when a child is exposed to that and starts identifying with that, even if they are hurt repeatedly, they will still go back to the abuser. And it's something that's, I had to work very hard and see therapists and, to become a survivor of domestic violence. But my son, there's really, I don't know how long it's going to take. It's probably going to be a lifetime of it.
Yeah, I mean, it impacts their emotional and psychological and mental development, and that is what's not being taken in account. Plus, right, they get to see a system that places them with the abuser. So it's very hard for them to make any sense out of that. What kind of message does that give children, for them to be placed with the abuser and then to be taken out and put into foster care and then back with the abuser and then back in foster care? I mean, it has nothing to do with the best interest of the child whatsoever.
No, it doesn't. And so then, we've had really good times all together as a family, even though we're not living together. This picture here is from a bowling alley where we frequented on multiple visitation occasions, and we'd only be able to spend 2 hours together. That's it. So we had a good time.
The whole supervised visitation, it's a scam. Really, it is a scam. It's just to make more money. What's this hour going to do? You're not raising your child. You're not part of your child's development. It really is a crime against humanity. This entire placement of children with abusers, or, really what's happened here in your case is that as a victim, you're re-victimized by the system. Yeah. You're punished for the fact that you're the father of your children is abusive.
Yeah, well, and that's one of the things that they tried to make me commit to, is that what was my part in being this victim of domestic violence. And when I said to them, well, my part was that I didn't know how to get out of it. I was trying, I was asking for help, but there weren't any services to help me get out of it. Again, it's that victim, when you're victimized and you have to identify with your abuser in order to survive. Now, this brings up another very important point about statistics of victims of domestic violence. And we talked about this before. Do you have that website?
Yeah, the National Domestic Violence Hotline. Let me share it with the audience here. Yeah.
So, what this is really saying is that, yeah, there are men who are victims of domestic violence, but the reality is that 4 out of 5 registered and reported domestic violent incidents, it is the woman who is the victim. And, we have a system here where the law says that the victim has a right to have a say and be able to tell their story, and that needs to be considered fact. But the reality is that whoever's the most I guess, demonstrative and doesn't have the trauma of trying to explain that they've been a victim is going to be paid attention to. And normally it's the abuser, because the abuser believes that they are justified in abusing you. That's part of the cycle of violence. And then they say, oh, well, it's because you did something or you said something. There is no excuse for abuse, no matter what led to it, because nothing leads to it. Abuse in itself is a person's lack of control and inability to act as an adult. Okay? Now, we suffer in our society a great number of incidents where people do not behave like adults. I mean, we see it on YouTube channels, we see it in the news, we see it everywhere, we see it in print, and it's being rewarded. Even having it noticed is a reward in itself. You're being seen. To be seen acting wrong or behaving badly is counterintelligent. And yet, it's a serious illness that we suffer today. And I believe that if more survivors of domestic violence incidents come out and speak out about their experiences, the better life will become for everybody, especially our children, because what we're really looking at is, let's act rationally. Let's talk rationally. If we've got a problem, take a breath. Take a time out. And I learned some of this in the services that the Department of Child and Family Services provided. So it's like, there are some good things out there. It's just how it's applied in the judicial system or not applied is where things seem to fall apart. And they fall apart for a number of reasons, the funding being one of them, power and control being another one. An abuser has power and control over an abusee. It doesn't matter if it's in a relationship, husband-wife, sister-daughter. It doesn't matter. The person who is the abuser has the control over the situation. And that's not right. I don't think that's right any bit. And I don't think it's right that we don't have the advocacy that we need.
Absolutely. And, you're making some really good points here that the abuser is trying to get power. Well, he is. He is, making his power be the most important thing in everyone's lives, unfortunately. And these types of bullies use the judicial system as another tool of control. And we can look here at academic research that the statistics show that 82% of abusers who fight for full custody get it. And, there's a lot of research here. I can keep scrolling here. For all these fathers' rights people out there who say that this is funded by women, I would like to see evidence of that, because there is no motherhood funding, but there is fatherhood funding. So these people are actually all people from the academic field that are reporting on the fact that children are placed in full custody of abusers. And the other point that you're bringing up is the funding of that pro-abuse industry, which is really what it is.
Yeah.
on this website here, and I share it often during the show because this is just wonderful research by one of the protective mothers who started digging into this. And these are all PDFs of that federal funding. This is all fatherhood funding. And often it is disguised as victim support for, for example, domestic violence shelters. But so it's kind of a system that's gone haywire, or maybe it's an intentional pro-abuse system where the system can't function without victims. So,
well, yeah, but there used to be, see, where I live, there used to be like 4 victim shelters. And in fact, since I've been living up in the city, I've met some of the original founders of one of the original domestic violence shelters that no longer exists here. It didn't exist when I asked for a bed. There wasn't one because there wasn't the shelter. But they're gone. All of them are gone except for one. And it's a very small shelter, and it's inland. And it's always full, and there's always an overflow of victims. And those who weren't able to get in a shelter, and if they have kids, are more than likely to lose their kids.
What I don't even understand in your story is like you had a place to live. So why would you have to be going to a domestic violence shelter if you have a place?
Because there's no funding to assist me to move my trailer. That was part of their excuse. Another part of their excuse was there are not sufficient services available to keep the children from being removed from my care again. Yeah, it's a quote. And I won't show you the paperwork because I'm in litigation.
I believe you.
No. And it was like when I came up originally to get the restraining order together, I was bullied in the office into, making this huge story so that the officers could write it down and then print it up. And then the next day I'd have to come and review it. And, it was like, yeah, it was crazy. And, so I was being bullied when I was asking for help. When I had my kids, I was being bullied by CPS. And they said, you have to come up. You have to come up. You have to come up every day. Because the Department of Child and Family Services, most government offices are only open 4 days a week. But all 4 of those days, I was up with my 3 children, one of whom, at that point, was 6 months old. 6 months old. When I did go to the juvenile court with my baby in arms, I walked into the courtroom. I sat in the same room as the abuser. And I was trying to make some sense out of everything. And I was talking to a lawyer who came in and was saying, yes, it's okay. I'll represent both of you. So I was getting all kinds of confused messages right there in the courtroom. And then another lawyer came in and said, nope, sorry, you have to split up or you're not going to get your kids back. And I'm like, okay, if that's the way it is. But we were trying to, come to some kind of a adult agreement. Again, behaving like adults. This is what it's about. Or not behaving like adults. So, that by the time that we were to go in and talk to the judge, CPS had already made their report, their detention report, and said, no, or jurisdictional report, I'm sorry, said, no, we're taking the kids away from you because you didn't get a restraining order.
Oh.
I'm like, well, I was trying, but, I don't have money. I'm stuck 55 miles away from the courthouse, and you've been asking me to come up every day. Every day. How am I supposed to keep on doing this without you helping me?
First, you're going to get your kids taken away because you did ask for a restraining order, and then it gets used against you because you didn't get the opportunity to get the restraining order. So whatever you do, you're always stuck between a rock and a hard place, so it seems.
Yeah, and that's been the way it's always been. And see, one of the problems we have in this country, and I don't know, it probably is worldwide, but we're just talking here right now, is the misconception that everybody who has to take medication, whatever that medication is, but if they have to take it every day, then they are not fit to take care of children. And that's one of the things they use against parents like myself, who has every documented reason that this medication works and keeps me functioning with my disabilities. It didn't matter because it's a class 1 medication, and it was something they could use to say that I couldn't take care of my parents. You know, and I have had so many psychologists, I've had psychiatrists all say that I am functioning when I'm on this medication, and I don't have, my disabilities are, managed. You know, and that's what it's supposed to do.
Well, it's discriminatory to have it be used against you.
Yeah.
Don't you have rights if you have disabilities?
Okay, yes, I do have rights. I have a lot of rights. The issue is when you are disabled, and especially have mental disabilities, and you are in a situation such as the one that I found myself in, there are no parent advocates. There are no people that know or care to tell you what they know that can protect you from the discriminatory actions of this agency. The agency itself has no moral or ethical values whatsoever. And if they see children that are good-looking children, and you've seen the pictures of my children, they're beautiful children, they're adoptable. And in fact, when my parental rights were removed, the judge looked at the pictures and says, okay, well, she seems adoptable. For my daughter. She looks adoptable. She's 8 years old now.
Sounds like a slave market.
Yes, it is. It's, and 70% in California, they just published a video talking about this. They found sex trafficking in Southern California, and they busted a whole bunch of pimps and just barely touching the surface here.
Well, there were 28 children in that bust who were in the care of the Department of Children and Family Services, who were being sex trafficked. So one has to wonder, when your child is seized by CPS with or without a warrant, because we see those movies come by all the time of children who are removed without even a warrant, for frivolous reasons, because they're homeschooling their children, or because they're deciding that their children should have vegetarian diets, or because the color of their eyes are blue or brown or whatever.
They're not vaccinated. I mean,
right.
It goes on.
And at that point, CPS takes over, and that's it. You're fighting against a huge machine, basically,
yes.
Which is extremely difficult. And I don't see how it's in the best interest of the child, especially not if these children often end up in abusive situations where they get molested, where they get abused in all kinds of different ways, and where they actually also, unfortunately, pass away.
Yes.
And let me share my screen here because there's been people who have started creating databases, which is one of the things I also do. I create databases to show people what's happening. And this is one, Protected to Death by CPS. And, you know, here and there it'll also tell you how the child died, right? Wandered into a creek, beaten, suffocation, battered. This all happens in foster care. And this list is very long.
Yes. In fact, after
it.
my kids were taken and I moved up here, I discovered that a baby in this same town had been removed from her mother and placed with her mother's brother. So that's the uncle. And the uncle was repeatedly hitting the child against the wall, a baby of 3 months, and killed her. CPS had placed her with him. They hadn't even done a background check on him. They don't do background checks on foster care. They just do background checks on parents. It's horrible.
So we can conclude that they don't really care what happens to the kids as long as they get their money?
Yeah, I would definitely concur with that. And they target certain people. It is very selective, and some of it has to do with whether or not the parent is has means financially, whether or not the parent is disabled, straight up, whether or not that parent has family nearby. All of these things, it's profiling.
I think it's very important for any children that might be facing a situation like this is to be very vocal. We need the kids to be empowered and to speak up and to say, I do not want to go to foster care. I want to go to my mother.
Even when they do speak up, it's very selective. Like I say, you know, they're happy if an abusive father and his son want to get together and talk. But when it comes to a child saying, no, I don't want to be in foster care, I want to be with my mom, they don't even pay any attention to that. When a child is kicking and screaming because they can't be with their mother, because they're being removed forcefully at the end of a visit, I've experienced that. I was told in no uncertain terms that I had to prepare my children to leave me at the end of every visit. It was very disheartening.
Well, it's extremely traumatizing for these children. And, you know, these are adverse childhood experiences, which is, interestingly enough, researched and reported on by the Department of Justice. So, you know, it's counterintuitive if the Department of Justice states that these types of experiences are traumatic and on par with sexual abuse. You know, just the psychological abuse of being removed from a mother. If the Department of Justice is stating that, then why are they not preventing it? And, you know, we know the answer. This is about financial incentives. You know, especially when we're talking about CPS. CPS is not necessarily a gender-biased organization. All they do care about is adopting out these children. And I've shown on previous shows children who are, you know, pictures of children online where it says, adopt us and we will terminate the parental rights of the parents for you. It's like, excuse me?
No, that's not right. it's barbaric, and it's been going on for centuries. The ruling class has always acted upon some kind of entitlement, that they have the means and therefore they deserve to take care of the children. And it goes way, way back in history, and it demoralizes people who dissent, and has been used to take over whole civilizations, including the Native American tribes. The United States of America has routinely, and even as late as the 1930s, was still routinely taking young children from their native families and placing them in boarding schools across the country so they could never see their family again, destroying the family connection, the heritage, the whole line and history of that family, to defeat dissenting entities. And it has to stop. It's horrible, but it's real, and it's getting worse today. More parents who speak out. I've been speaking out in favor of peaceful resolutions and living in peace and harmony and sustainable living and environmental action, and just bringing people together for years. And divide and conquer is how the masses are controlled. And that's what we see here today, is divide and conquer all over again.
Yeah, that's one of my conclusions as well. If you destroy the family structure, you create not only traumatized parents, but traumatized children, and usually traumatized children will pass on the abuse to the next generation. And this becomes like a pro-abuse machine, and the oil is the trauma. And it sustains not only the foster care industry and CPS and all this federal funding and this fatherhood funding and all the programs that are attached to it, but it also, creates, I think the main purpose is to create children who are easily brainwashed into becoming compliant citizens. So much money is made out of this. It's also the pharmaceutical industry that's making money out of this. If you traumatize kids, there's going to be a big chance that these kids are going to be on antidepressants at some point, or other type of psych meds. Or maybe they will start acting out during adolescence and start doing drugs. So that feeds the drug industry and the rehab industry. It is just endless, right? And as we have been scrolling through this insane list here, I just had to do that because the scrolling by itself, shows you how intense it is, and that's just the tip of the iceberg.
The foster care programs and systems are also a testing grounds. I strongly believe they are, because for new drugs. In the last year, it became legal to give children from the age of 10 up a class 1 drug if they are going in for surgery, if they are hurting, like dental surgery and stuff. A class 1 drug, Vicodin, and these kinds of drugs actually cause more death than using herbs, natural remedies. All of those herbs and natural remedies, they save lives. But there's this pharmaceutical industry that says they don't, because they don't make any money off of herbs. They make money off of toxic chemicals that they put in your body. And it's it's atrocious to see that our children are being used as guinea pigs. I contested repeatedly in court. I contested vaccinations that have been proven to cause the illness that they are meant to prevent and cause other illnesses that are unrecognizable or undeterminable. And, I was denied. They said, oh, yeah, you have your parental rights, but we don't see that there's any problem with your kids getting a vaccination, so that right is now denied to you.
I want to share my screen here and show the audience this website called medicalkidnap.com, which is on this topic that you are discussing. And there's a lot of really good articles on this website which evidence exactly what you're sharing right now. The experimentation that's happening on children, the kidnapping that's happening via hospitals, the organ harvesting that's going on. Wow, which is an entire show by itself, just this particular topic.
No, it's scary. It's really scary.
Yeah, and there are whistleblowers, and I want to share my screen here. And for those viewers who are not aware who Nancy Schaefer is, Nancy Schaefer was a Georgia senator who actually discovered that CPS was trafficking children, and she started exposing this. She went all around the world and spoke at conferences and family law Congress to talk about this, to talk about the corruption of child protective services. This lady is our hero. Yeah. We're printing T-shirts right now. This lady is our icon. She unfortunately was murdered because she blew the whistle on this $3 trillion global industry.
Was her husband also murdered in that too?
Yeah, her husband was murdered as well. They labeled it a murder-suicide, of course, to cover it up. But this lady was very active, not aggressive whatsoever. So it was clearly a cover-up, and everyone knows it. She dedicated her life to this topic. She dedicated her life to exposing what's going on with child protective services. And, God bless her and God rest her soul for making the ultimate sacrifice for the children, because it takes someone like this to be the whistleblower. It can be you and it can be me, but if it's a senator, right? I mean, that gets taken serious. We need people, policymakers, people in leading functions to come out and share what's going on. That would really be helpful. One of those heroes is Sean McMillan. And not only is he a whistleblower, he's, the hero attorney as far as I'm concerned, because he actually teaches parents how to file civil rights claims against CPS workers, against social workers. For anyone who's watching this show who is considering to fight back because their children have been stolen by Child Protective Services and fostered out, Sean McMillan does workshops all over the United States. They're packed. I mean, it's like standing room only. People travel thousands of miles to see Sean McMillan do a workshop on how to file a civil rights claim. This is one of the ultimate heroes as far as I'm concerned. He has shared with me that he wants to come on the show, which I'm very, very happy about, because then we can interview him and ask him, pick his brain, and also go, I have questions for him also on how to go after other types of individuals involved in this court child trafficking. But Sean has been very successful. He got this mother and daughter, I think that he got them each about $10 million in damages for what has happened to them. Now, this is not about money, okay?
No, it's not.
No amount of money is going to repair the grief that we and our children are going through or have gone through. However, why is this important? We need to make sure the system spends more on civil rights suits against us than that they make off of our children, right? If we're going to make this cost more for them, then we are really going to, throw a wrench into the machine.
Well, the Coalition for the Protection of Children and Families is about supporting parents who want to file civil claims, not only against CPS, but against officials. And what we need is for parents to read the Constitution of the United States first and foremost, figure out whether or not your civil rights have been violated, because that's where you need to know. You need to know your rights. I didn't know my rights when I got in this entanglement. I had to go back to college. I went to college. I studied psychology. I studied some other things, but I studied law too. And it takes time, but my children are worth it. And I'm sure yours are too.
And you started the Coalition for the Protection of Children and Families, right?
I did a couple of months ago.
This is just amazing. I mean, here you are, you've lost custody of your 3 children to foster care because your exes were abusive instead of you, which is outrageous. I mean, there are no words for how I feel when I listen to your story. And for you to be able to turn that around and to start this organization, to become that that beacon of support, which is what you missed when you were in your situation, is like the ultimate inspiration to me, and I'm sure to many other protective mothers.
Well, thank you.
I also want to share your Facebook page here. So for people to find you on Facebook. And I think you have another site here.
I have a page that, I have lots of pages and a couple of Facebook groups, but for different things. And this one is about supporting family values. When we think about what's happening in the world today, families everywhere are being torn apart. Instead of having conflict resolution happen, we're having it's childish behavior. It's not mature. This is not being adults. This is he said, she said. Who's going to believe what, And I think that as a society, we're more intelligent than that. It's just the trauma causes us to revert back to our youth because, we don't have the ability to process trauma very well. And I've studied a lot about that in psychology, and that's why we have the dysfunctional society we have.
It also gets stimulated. I mean, family court professionals, but they want this conflict because the longer conflict goes on, the more money is made by attorneys and evaluators and guardian ad litem's and supervisors. And I mean, my gosh, it's a huge industry, and all these folks have unregulated income. They charge outrageous hourly fees. And
yes, they bankrupt parents all of the time. I've read a few cases where the lawyer will take a case and then before the final court trial, just drop it. So you're on your own.
This is what happened to me. That's what happened to me. A week before my custody trial, my attorney, I wanted to have a coerced stipulated agreement set aside. And she said, I don't want to do that. And she just dropped me as a client. And I was 1 week away from my trial. And then the court didn't give me access to my records for 2 years. So I couldn't fight it. And I was bankrupted. And these are the kinds of games that they play. And children are being traumatized severely in the process. And these people
constantly caught in the middle. Yeah.
How do they sleep at night is really what I wonder. How do these people sleep at night?
In the bed of dollars.
You know, I don't believe there's any happiness to be gained from this type of, soul harvesting. You know, misery harvesting. I also want to show your Twitter account here. Support family values, support family VA for everyone. So get in touch with Lyra if you want to join the activism, because one of the things that you provide, you told me, is support for protective mothers, protective parents in the form of pro se help. Is that correct?
It is correct, and it's more than just that. Right now, I just put this together, and I'm looking for volunteers because we need to be able to be live and help distraught parents through this legal battle. Okay, right immediately when they're on the page and they're looking at, there's countless information, and I've only just started listing my part, and you're working on yours on your site, and it's like that interconnectedness of information sharing is not easy to navigate through for anyone. And so it's important to have a parent advocate there who can help you navigate and understand not only what happened and what civil rights you lost. And let me tell you, 98% of the cases that are in family court should not be there because there are civil rights violations in one form or another. And the big one is that there's no, what's it called? Oh, shoot. I'm blanking out right now. I'm sorry.
Due process violations.
There you go. Thank you.
I can read your mind, because that is what it all comes down to, is due process violations.
Exactly. We don't get a trial. We don't get, in fact, we are, okay, and the other thing is coercion. Anybody who is forced into a contract, when another person uses any kind of, when you hold a hostage, well, they're holding our kids, and then they say, you have to sign this, and you have to go through this. That's all coercive tactics. If you don't do this, you don't get your kids back. That's coercive tactics. If you leave this town, you won't get to see your kids. That's coercion. That's against the law, the federal law.
It's extortion.
It's extortion.
And it's judicial bullying. And for all the mothers out there who tell me, oh, I'm not going to share my story because maybe I'll lose the 10 minutes of visitation I still have with my child. Children are not allowed to be used as judicial bait.
Right. No, they're not. And yet we live in a culture right now that, well, okay, I'm learning this right now, and one of the parent advocates that I do have signed up right now, he's done a lot of research into law, into the Bill of Rights and the Constitution, and what the United States of America is about. The United States of America is a corporation. It's not a country, and a corporation cannot own anybody. And so when parents are being told there's nothing you can do in juvenile court or family court, Don't listen to them. They're totally wrong. That court is just a breeding ground for this bad behavior and destruction of families. And the thing is that when we don't get due process, that's against our federal constitutional right. And we have to go to the federal court system to make them see that that's not right, not only to see it, but to be accountable, held accountable. When I came into the system, I was told I had to be accountable for my actions. The Department of Child and Family Services has to be held accountable for their actions. They say they don't. There are social workers all over the country that say they didn't know they weren't supposed to lie in court. But the federal court has said you cannot lie in court. That is a federal offense. You cannot coerce anybody. That is a federal offense. But we can't get them to do what they don't want to do. And when the money is in foster care and in adoptive care and in sex trafficking and child trafficking, and nobody's taking them to task for being in gross violation of the parental and parental rights everywhere, they're going to keep on doing it.
Yeah, it's incredible that we have to go to court to actually prove in court that social workers do not have the right to lie. And as we're talking, I'm scrolling through my huge list of links here because I want to bring people to the case where this was just decided, where the federal court finally decided that it's not allowed to lie in court, which any normal person would understand, you would think, but this is something that actually has to still be battled out in court, apparently. And this is very, very important that we, and I can't find the links this quickly, but I will try in a little bit. What we can do, however, is try also find ways to fight back against these judges that are making these types of rulings where they basically don't look at the evidence. They have two parents in front of them and they look at like who looks the best or who behaves the most calm or something. It's not, they don't even look at the exhibits that are attached to the motions, which I'm finding. I mean, for example, in my particular case, my ex submitted evidence of the fact that he worked with a federation who helped him get full custody of our daughter. I mean, what is this federation, right? And it just kind of slips through. These judges don't look at it. They don't look at what's being submitted. He hacked my bank account. He hacked my email account and submitted the evidence himself in motions and requests for orders. And I have to go and show the judge, like, look, you know, he submitted this 2 years ago. Excuse me, you're allowing a criminal to have custody.
Yeah.
So we need to also go after judges who are asleep at the wheel. We need much more time. And you know what? I'm not saying that all judges are bad, but let's at least create a situation where they actually have training in domestic violence, training in coercive control, training in all kinds of, recognizing manipulative, narcissistic people that they have to get in front of them. Really research these cases in depth. They need to have time. I mean, these cases are like, I don't know how many cases a judge handles in a day. When I'm on court call for my own cases, that judge that I'm dealing with goes through 5 cases in half an hour. It's like, excuse me, these are people. These are
right.
not, not things. These are people. These are the decisions that are made or have huge impacts, yet they only get maybe 10 minutes of time. And I'm sure that they read some motions the day before, but it's become a machine, and we need to hold judges accountable. I mean, if they have too many cases on their plate, whether that's intentional or non-intentional, they need to also stand up and say, hey, our caseload is too much. We need more help investigating these cases from the get-go. And so, if you have a judge that is particularly bad, I mean, there's some of them that just will even say, the mother is too emotional, so I'm putting in a no contact order. This type of stuff. We need to go after those bad apples in the basket, and unfortunately, there are many of them. This is a good article, Weightier Matter, talks about judges have malpractice insurance, and you can go after that. Why judges are afraid, you'll figure it out. I mean, this is the type of stuff we need to do. The filing of complaints only gets us so far. I know you're in California in Mendocino County. You probably are aware that the Commission on Judicial Performance is now being audited by the state of California for the first time in, I don't know, half a decade, 50 years, I believe, half century, I should say.
Well, that's after there was a grand jury report that came out in May of 2015, I believe, stating that in Mendocino County, less than 25% of social workers hired actually qualify to do their job. Now, social workers don't need to have a license to do any investigation work. However, they are supposed to have a master, social worker one, all of them are supposed to have a master's degree in social work and child and family services. When less than 25% of them are being hired to do with the proper qualifications, kind of makes you wonder, what is the real plan here? This has been going on for years. This isn't just a one-time event. It's still going on. I go into the office until last month, I guess, and I know these people. I've been, and they keep on changing their employees because the employees can't stay because they're not qualified. And then, in order to supplement the lack of qualifications, what the department does is send these social workers to workshops so that they get certifications. Those certifications are not the same as getting a master's degree or a bachelor's degree. They're just certifications. And more, that's what the Department of Child and Family Services does. And it's not just in Mendocino County. But it's like they put a bandage on it. The grand jury report said, you got to fix this. This has to be fixed by 2017. Well, it's 2017. Not a whole hell lot has been fixed, And they've been doing that. I mean, there was a grand jury report before that from 2001 that was talking about unqualified and not enough agents. Well, there's only enough agents for a smaller amount of kids to be removed, but they don't care whether there are enough agents. They just want to keep removing kids. And, when my parental rights were taken away by the judge, you're talking about judges needing to be accountable as well. The judge said to me, I asked for a Marsden hearing. Now, for all of those who don't know what a Marsden hearing is, a Marsden hearing is a request to change counsel because your counsel, public defender, has not done their job. You have to bring proof. So I asked for a Marsden hearing, and the judge gave me one, and I went in and I said, well, my lawyer has a conflict of interest, and she's not doing her job, and this is a very important hearing because this is about my children and my parental rights to them, and she hasn't been, doing her job. She didn't even prepare for this trial. She didn't even talk to the psychologists that I had been seeing for 3 years who said I am fit to have my kids. At the end of that Marsden hearing, the judge said because I didn't have the emails right in front of me, what I had was some other paperwork that I had to print out because my lawyer couldn't print it out. And that was my explanation. I'm like, well, my lawyer couldn't print this stuff out, so I had to get this information I thought was important because it shows my work, what I have done to comply with this reunification plan. She didn't do that, so I had to put it together, and then she couldn't even print it out, so I had to print it out, and I didn't have time to print out this other thing because I don't have a printer at home. I'm sorry, I'm not rich and, get the new fandangled iPhones and all that stuff. I live conservatively because I'm disabled and can't get a job right now. Does that mean that I shouldn't take care of my kids? I don't think so. But she said, no, I'm sorry, you can't have new counsel. You can't have new counsel. Yes, our cases are overloaded. Yes, you're going to have some problems with communication. But that's just the way it is.
Excuse me? This is about your parental rights.
Right, exactly. She's like, every parent has a right to adequate counsel, but our caseloads we have too much caseload. And so it's just not possible. That's what she said. It's just not possible. I am sorry to say that it is our right. It has to be possible.
There's shitty attorneys out there. I mean, not only do they abandon us, they don't represent us to the best of their abilities. I mean, I've had attorneys tell me, look, I got to go in front of that same judge next week, so I really can't fight as hard as you would like me to. It's like, excuse me? That right there is a conflict of interest. So I'm all for what you are suggesting and doing with your organization, which is fighting pro se.
Yes.
It took me a while to wrap my head around it because obviously I'm in another country and I'm fighting my case in the United States in a language that's not my own, and now I have to learn California law on top of all the other things I have to do to survive and, make it through the havoc that some hateful man has inflicted in my life. But I'm finding that now I'm getting the hang of it. It is extremely effective. I have accomplished more in 6 months than any attorney has since the case started in 2009. I highly recommend it. So when people get in touch with your organization, what kind of support, pro se support do you provide?
Yeah, well, we suggest, like I say, that you start by learning the Constitution of the United States. And there's a link and a downloadable PDF file. And that is the most important piece of pro se representation that you can have for yourself. We have some people who have had personal experience fighting pro se that are willing to assist you in locating and printing out forms. We are not lawyers, and so therefore cannot legally write up your documents. You need to put those together yourselves, but we can help you with wording. We can help you with finding the resources. If you go down to, on the left-hand side, there should be, in courts and forms, go to the Federal Supreme Court. If you click on the Federal Supreme Court link, that will take you to a page that talks about some laws, civil rights laws about coercion. and how you can redress your the violation of that law, which protects you from coercive tactics. And then on the left-hand side of the screen are cases regarding parental rights and how they have been won, except for Troxel versus Granville was where it changed. Okay, that last, and parentalrights.org is one of the links that I offer on the other page, the front page of that part. Now this is a part of a bigger organization that I've been working on for years. That's why Earth College is up there. I have magnets that I sell and everything. I do a lot of different programs, and this has just become a forefront in my work since my children were removed. And so I just am collecting and sharing those links where you can take action, like this one here, the CAPRA. This is a national civil suit, national civil class action suit against the Department of Health and Human Services, which is in control of and funds CPS and BCSF. Okay, so, and they're going by region. You see the different regions there. And you can register, and they offer some free forms every once in a while. You want to get out of the family court as fast as possible. And you have a right to do that at any time if your civil rights have been violated. And like I say, 98% of the cases in which children are removed from families, parent civil rights have been violated. I also include on my page this referral number that's right up there that you can put in. There are others that are out there doing this as well. There's another page that I have just discovered, that parentalrights.org, that is working to change legislation to actually make a law specific, and it is down at the bottom here on the left-hand side of the screen. There's a link. Should be. Oh no, the resources, they're not there yet. Like I said, yes,
it's a work in progress.
It is, absolutely. And I need help. I need your help. Everybody out there who is dealing with this and has knowledge about filing forms in your state, because every state is different. The forms for even the federal government claims are different in each state. And, you know, it's comforting for parents who are going through this in whatever state you're in to be able to talk to somebody that's in your state, because they're going to have more of a grasp and an understanding of your state's legal process. Because in California, the 388 is different from Oregon or Washington. 388s being a form that you fill out to request a change in the orders in custody cases. But you have to have grounds and show reason for the change in your circumstances, which would allow and enable to be returned to you, and it has to go by certain guidelines, and each state is different, like I said. And there are, like you were saying earlier, about politicians that are starting to speak out and be whistleblowers. You know, Kamala Harris, who used to be the Attorney General of the state of California and is now the Senator of the state of California, did talk to LA Times in January of 2015 and admit that the foster care system in California is broken and that children are entering into the sex market through the foster care system. Other states, it's happening too. And we have to get those people in that political arena to not only be the whistleblowers, but also represent us as parents getting our parental rights back. And the only way we can do that is by coming together and actually, and a lot of people, it's really hard because we're all traumatized. We're dealing with the loss of our children, and they're alive. And they're somewhere, and some of us know where they are, but some of us don't. My children are in 3 different counties right now. None of them see each other. None of them see me. I'm lucky that I live 10 miles away from my youngest son, but I can't even say hi to him in the grocery store. The foster mom will just drag him away. So
We need unity, and we also need funding. I mean, you know, I do most of my work on a volunteer basis, but so many parents, all mothers, contact me every day that it can easily fill my entire day just working on other cases, and it's like, it's too much. You know, it's not like I'm, you know, there's no money coming in, but here I am giving my time and efforts, and, you know, it has to happen. So if there are any viewers out there who care about this issue, you know, please contact us, because we are the warriors on the front line trying to make a change and really donating all our time and energy on it. You know, I'm working on it sometimes 18 hours a day, and I'm sure you are too. You know, we were just talking about that before the show started. It's like when you're traumatized, you know, some moms can't handle it, and they can't function, but others like you and me actually become very active and productive, and which is a great thing. And this is what we need, and we need more moms to be vocal, talk about their experiences in domestic violence shelters or in family courts, on this show or other media outlets, or, you know, create websites and let your voices be heard, because otherwise, you know, people don't know what's going on. Right.
That's done. But and to all women who have been victims of domestic violence, it is up to you to overcome that trauma. You are stronger than that. You did not deserve it. You know, none of us deserve to be abused and victimized, whether it is physical or mental and emotional. You know, women are very often emotionally trapped as well as physically trapped, financially trapped, because we are women, because we have babies, because it takes time to recover from giving birth and being pregnant, because we are demanded at all hours of the day and night for our children's attention. You know, all of these things the abuser sees as a weakness and can use against us. And unfortunately, there are not the tools and resources out there right now to make us strong, and we have to make those ourselves. And you can overcome this. I did. I suffered being abused for many years. I was trapped for many years in an abusive relationship. I had very little contact with other people because I was so trapped. And I still saw that I could make some difference. And, you know, there's always a light at the end of that tunnel, however dark that tunnel may look right now. There is hope. But you need to get it. You need to go out and grab hold of it, because it's not going to just come to you. You have to make the effort.
Yeah, and when you make the effort, it will come. I mean, there's literally thousands of protective mothers on Facebook, for example. Some groups have, 3,000, 4,000 moms that all lost their children just in one group alone. And, it helps when you're having a hard time to just go into the group and share that. And At the same time, I also want to mention to be careful how you share and what you share, because there are some weird trolls out there who will actually screenshot stuff that happens in groups and submit it against a parent.
And they'll also start tearing you down.
That happens
On
too.
Facebook, they will tear you down. And, you know, another thing is, if you are in any kind of legal case where you're still pursuing legal action against an agency or an individual, when you post on Facebook, you need to be ambiguous. You can't just go all out with your story, because that, again, like Gertie said, will be screenshotted and will be shared.
And I was going to show the fatalities, since we were talking about trauma and the fact that some moms are not taking good care of themselves, and unfortunately, sometimes commit suicide, So this is a little database that I have here on my site. It's called Fatalities. There's also children who end up committing suicide. And if there's any children watching right now, please don't do that. You're not going to remain a child forever. By the time that we love you and we're waiting for you. And when you get out of that situation, you're going to be surrounded with love and support and help and everything to get you to heal from the experience. So just have to hang in there and find ways to get adults in your environment to help you and inform them. Be vocal. If you do get a chance to speak to a judge, tell them that you want to go home to mom. Tell them that there's abuse going on. Tell them that you want to be reunited with your mother. Because if you don't tell the judges, then they don't know. Same at CPS. If you talk to CPS, you need to really tell them what's happening. Otherwise, the adults will not intervene. These are all clickable links.
No lies. A lot of kids learn by example, especially when they are removed from houses, that they get attention for making up stories. Making up stories and telling the truth are two very different things. And you can tell the truth, and if you are being heard truthfully, then you should tell the truth and protect yourself. But if that's not really happening, then all you're doing is making somebody who's trying to help you a victim, because you're saying that they're doing something that they're not, and then they get persecuted wrongfully.
Yeah, we need to explain that a little bit more in kids' language. So what you're saying is that if you are a child and you don't really explain to the adults around you what's happening, then your environment thinks that mom is telling lies. Mm-hmm. Whereas if you don't, tell the truth, then the environment thinks that the abusive father isn't abusing. So if you don't speak up, you're actually enabling the abuser. And I understand that it's not possible for all children to speak up. You need to find a situation where you can be honest without, we don't want the children to be dealing with the repercussions by the abuser for coming out and speaking about what's happening. So you have to really be selective and build a relationship with adults who you feel you can trust. You kind of need to, feel your gut feeling and ask them, what would you do if you knew that a child was being abused?
Yeah, but like I say, it's very important that if it's happening to you and you are being harmed, that you tell the truth. There are a lot of parents and children who do not speak out, and by not speaking out, there's more harm done and death occurs. And this is a very tragic situation, and the only way that we can turn this around is to speak up for our rights and to speak up for our survival.
Well, I like the idea of your organization and the fact that you're providing this pro se support, which is really wonderful, and bringing the focus back to the civil rights. Of course, we also need CEDA and, ERA. We need ERA passed, the Equal Rights Amendment. We need equal rights for women in the United States.
Yeah.
We need the United Nations Rights of the Child instated in every country around the world, including the optional protocol, in order to be able to use these treaties to fight. So those are really important things to fight for in your local community and also with policymakers. Another thing we really need to do is go into law school and talk to law students. Also people who are going to school for their masters in social studies or psychology, right? The folks that are going to be the future players in this industry, if they are awake and aware of what's going on, they can start making changes from the inside out. This is very hard for us from the outside to fight this huge machine. Right.
Well, and another thing that I think is important is, if you feel that there aren't people to talk to help you, look for a place where you can get some education to help yourself. Whether it's online or at a college, there are grants all over the place to get back into college, and you can educate yourself online, and you need to start exploring and learning your rights because nobody else is going to stand up for them but you. It's very apparent public defenders don't get a rat's ass, honestly. And in the CPS courts here in my area, all of the public defenders and the social worker lawyer and the children's lawyer are all in the courtroom with the judge for half an hour before it even opens up for a case. And if you really think that there's no bartering going on, then you're seriously mistaken. There's bartering all over the place in that meeting at the beginning. And some of the public defenders get what they want and other public defenders don't. And that's just the way it is. And the only way we can make that change is by demanding that we get due process placed back into juvenile court. That really, honestly, when it comes to the parenting of our children, that is not a judicial sector. That the government should not be involved in that unless there's true, serious cases of abuse and not general neglect, but intentional neglect and, sexual abuse, like real serious proof of such things before the court even gets involved. But, that's not going to happen as long as we don't say anything. We have to act. We can't just say, oh my, poor me. Look at what the justice system has done to me. We can say, oh my God, this is wrong. How can I change it?
Another thing we should fight for is to get like all family court proceedings to be recorded. Yeah. For total transparency, which would really prevent these due process violations that are occurring to us. And these are things that we can fight for. These are things that we can approach policymakers about and, force this to be installed and implemented.
You also have a right in any meeting that you have with Social Services Department. You do have a right to record the conversation, but you have to ask. Okay. Every time that you meet with CPS workers, take that recorder in with you and make sure you have it recorded. I didn't, these are things that I didn't know. I didn't have any idea. I was in the dark, and it wasn't by choice, because, when you're stuck in a domestic violent relationship and you're the victim, you're trapped and you don't know where to look, and nobody's out there to say, oh, here, you go to here, you talk to these people. That doesn't happen. It should. I mean, in a perfect world, it would. But we don't live in that world. And the only way that we can make any difference here is to create it, and we can only create it if we get out there and make it happen.
Yeah, and also to become aware of your own personal situation. If you are in a relationship and you are suffering from psychological or emotional abuse, then you are also a domestic violence victim. This is a good website here, speakoutloud.net. I like the title, No Bruise, No Victim. You sure are. If you are being legally abused or emotionally abused, psychologically abused, you are a domestic violence victim. Legal abuse is domestic violence by proxy. It should be considered a form of domestic terrorism and handled by Homeland Security. These domestic terrorists need to be taken into criminal court and punished for the human rights inflictions, that they are causing. So these are some of the kind of solutions that I'm also looking at and trying to bring awareness about, at least. If we all do that, and all around the world, hopefully we can start making a change. And I agree with you, CPS workers need to be thoroughly trained. They need to also be checked for personality disorders themselves.
Yes, absolutely. And for drug testing, they should be, I don't know, there's countless occasions where I've seen social workers that have been, in supervised visitation that do not appear to be fully cognizant. Wonder what's going on there, and there's some that have been even caught for drug dealing scams that they have on the side. And, it happens, and it happens a lot more often than anybody wants us to know. There's a lot of different groups right now that are standing up to advocate in different areas. One of them is parentalrights.org. They are, at this time, in 4 different states lobbying for parental civil rights to be an amendment. I think it's Amendment 28 to the United States Constitution. So, we're out there. We need to be becoming a stronger link together, because it's happening everywhere. And the only way that we're going to be able to overcome this giant is become huge, giant corporation of child trafficking is if we work together and we do so in an organized fashion. And that requires physical meetings, it requires phone calls, it requires letters, it requires petitions, it requires continually battering at that door. There's a saying, if you throw enough shit at the wall, some of it's bound to stick. Mm-hmm. We have to be that shit that's going to stick to this wall, this child trafficking wall and judicial wall that has been placed in front of us.
And lobby around the bills that are introduced, that are on the right track, like this one, Resolution 150, where, child safety is the first priority of custody and visitation. I mean, these are, for anyone who's not familiar with our topic, they probably wonder why we even have to vote on this topic, but trust me, we still are in the dark ages on children's rights and children's safety.
Yes.
So, we need to get rid of these nonsense, very damaging theories of parental alienation syndrome. Let's not talk and use that term anymore, because it's used against protective mothers by pedophiles who use the judicial system as a tool of coercive control to avoid paying child support, judicially coerce the mothers into paying them child support, and for them to continue to molest and abuse their kids and create child pornography. So we need the justice system to become aware of this, and apparently we have to hit them over the head with these types of bills because they don't quite get it. So let's support these types of legislative, bills that are in the works. And, whatever you think of President Trump, let's hope he yanks the federal fatherhood funding, which is completely discriminatory and causes literally millions of protective mothers in the United States to lose custody of their children. And I know he might be watching, so you never know.
Well,
anyway.
And also, all of you parents, please join the Coalition for the Protection of Children and Families. We aren't just about the CPS system. We're not just fighting that. We're not just about the justice system or the family courts or divorce court. This is about the rights of children and families. And it is a right for a child to have their parent involved in their life. And there are now some, I guess, Ashton Kutcher is very famous for movies and for that 70s show, but he's also head of an organization that is exposing child and sex trafficking all over the world right now. And he started talking about the foster system here in America, and he went and spoke to the Senate, I believe, last month about this and how they need to be getting on the ball and fixing it. Well, he's just one voice. We have to be a whole bunch of voices here. We can't
That's
just
right.
have one voice. I mean, he has fame and he has fortune and he has a family. And he's fighting for children all over the world, okay? But we are the parents that need to be standing up and saying, listen, this is wrong. We're the ones that are being affected.
Well, you just did it right here on Hell is for Children. And I want to thank you for doing that. We've come to the end of the show, and I want to thank you for being brave and courageous and sharing your own personal story. But what is really impressive about you is that you have turned your traumatic situation into a productive organization where you're helping other mothers, other parents who are victims of abuse and the CPS system and family court system. I have so much respect for you. Seriously, I can't even imagine a nightmare that you're going through, having your 3 children in 3 different foster care families, and none of you have contact with each other. I hope that somehow this show contributes to having that nightmare resolved. You deserve your children back. I mean, that's clear. This is a ridiculous situation. And, I hope somehow the show contributes to you finding the people who can help you achieve that, and for other mothers to find your organization, and for us to unite, make that tsunami wave of change, to kind
That's
of
what we
beat down that wall
Yeah.
of judicial child trafficking. So thank you
Yes.
for being on.
Thank
And
you.
well,
It was a pleasure to be on your show, Gertie, and we're not alone. None of us are alone.
that's right.
And we need all of you parents out there who are dealing with the same issues, and we are, a lot of us dealing with these issues today, to speak out. You have a voice. Use it. Learn your law. Learn how to represent yourself. The judge is going to look at you with praise if you are there prepared to fight and defend your children at all costs.
That's right. And if you want to come share your story on House for Children, just connect with me on Facebook and send me a private message. And use the show to get some publicity about your case and draw people towards you who can support you. All right. That's all the time we have. Thank you, Lyra. And thank you, everybody, for watching another episode of Hells for Children. I hope to see you again next week. Bye-bye, everybody.
Peace.
If we want to change the world, we must first change the media. Mainstream media exists for the purposes of indoctrination and manipulation of public perception